Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. President Trump has drafted an executive order that would block states from enforcing their own regulations around artificial intelligence. It's a move that runs smack into a bill that passed during this year's legislative session in Albany and which Governor Kathy Hochul is considering signing. Now, if she does sign this rails around AI and President Trump does sign this executive order, the two will be on a collision course around regulating artificial intelligence. CNN is reporting that Trump's executive order would establish a litigation task force within the office of the Attorney General. Its sole job would be to challenge state AI laws and preempt them with Trump's, quote, more lax federal policy. On Thursday, Governor Hochul issued a statement that read in part, "We passed some of the nation's strongest AI safeguards to protect kids, workers, and consumers." Now the White House is threatening to withhold hundreds of millions of dollars in broadband funding meant for rural upstate communities, all to shield big corporations from taking basic steps to prevent potential harm from AI. This is unacceptable. Joining us with more on this and the predictive marketplaces is Assemblyman Clyde Vannell. He chairs the Banks Committee as well as the subcommittee on Internet and New Technology. Welcome back. It's always good to see you.
Thanks for having me here. Really excited to be here with you.
So what are your thoughts on Trump's executive order around AI?
So, we've been dealing with the president for a while. So he is floating the idea. We haven't seen the executive order.
No.
But he's floating the idea to come out with an executive order to actually, prevent and stop states from regulating AI. And in America, in the United States, currently we have a system in place where the federal government has their jurisdiction and so does the states. Our AI bills that were passed both houses last year, we made sure that it doesn't violate federal law, and it's narrowed to how it affects New Yorkers. What's really important is that there's a place and space for the federal government to regulate, but in New York State we also have to make sure that New Yorkers stay safe, and that the internet or whatever industry, whatever kinds of means there are there, that we protect our New Yorkers narrowly, that abide by the Constitution, and our laws have done.
Yeah, so the legislature actually passed quite a few bills dealing with artificial intelligence, but I just want to ask you real quickly about the RAISE Act, which I mentioned in the introduction. It would regulate large-scale AI. Can you tell us a little bit about what it would do and if you're a proponent?
Yes, I'm a proponent of the RAISE Act, and yes, it would regulate large-scale AI, how it affects, and making sure that New York users in New York State. So we were dealing with, for example, when we talked about, chatbots. So when we talk about generative AI, what's important is that we have to make sure that there are safeguards in our state to be able to make sure that New Yorkers are safe when using these platforms. And these types of assurances that we have, these type of protections, are protections that the platforms should be able to provide, and we must make sure that we keep New Yorkers safe. And we have to balance keeping New Yorkers safe at the same time making sure that industry can make sure that innovation can also thrive.
This is sort of the same refrain that you're using on another topic. You're carrying a bill that would protect consumers who would utilize the state's predictive betting markets. I'm not sure I even know what a predictive betting market is, Assemblyman. Can you tell us about it?
Susan, it's this new thing out here where people are able to use these platforms to be able to really bet on anything. What they are is they are platforms that allow people to bet on futures, to allow people to bet on an event, to allow people to say, how long will this, will Susan eat, a tuna fish sandwich for lunch? And you could actually make a contract that way, and people could actually bet yes or no. And these predictive markets have boomed in the last few years, and what's beyond our minds is that people can have predictive markets and bet on any kind of event imaginable.
Like the
So
mayoral race in New York City, whether or not Mamdani was going to win was something that the predictive betting markets looked at.
that's right. They looked at that. They also looked at things like which we were very concerned about was, how long when the LA fires would end,
Oh my God.
or when, how many people, when would when things with respect to major tragedies.
So,
Um,
so these are some of these are very crass, but why is it a problem in terms of public policy?
Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Now, what's happening with these predictive markets, if you'll find that a large percentage of these contracts are now being wrapped into state regulated gambling activity. So there are a lot of contracts now with respect to sports betting. And what happens is these platforms are they're providing contracts for sports betting and calling it not sports betting. And what's happening now is if you see many of the major betting platforms are registered and licensed under many states are rescinding their licenses and changing themselves to become prediction markets so that they can go into and provide the same, similar services without being regulated.
So this is called the Oracle Act, and you're going to be introducing it. You have introduced it, and you're going to try to pass it in the next legislative session.
Yes, yeah, and what it simply says is this, and what I'm saying now is that if you're providing these kinds of gambling activities in New York State, you have to abide by the same regulations that we have for the licensed folks that provide these kinds of services.
It's called the Oracle Act. We'll be following it, and we've been speaking with the person who introduced it, Assemblyman Clyde Vannell. I want to thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.